morning. Good to be here this morning. Thanks, guys, for great songs and worship. Yeah, so this morning we're going to look at the book of Mark. Great book. If you've got, I don't know, does anyone here have a Bible? Do you guys bring Bibles to school? Just kidding. I'm sure you do. I hope you do. If you got your Bible, open up to Mark 5. We're going to look at a great story of how Jesus encounters this crazy guy. And I like to call this message a story of a mission, a maniac, and a miracle. And in this story, Jesus, as I said, he encounters this demon-possessed man. And he does something that no one else does. He actually doesn't run away from this guy. He doesn't, turn his back or, go way around him. But he actually confronts this man, and he changes his life. And he has a miracle, and he gives this man a mission. I'm going to read the story in Mark 5, but Matthew also tells this story, and Matthew actually tells a story with two demon-possessed men, and, different commentators think of why, was Mark leaving out one. I like to think that Mark tells the story with just one because he really emphasizes the mission that this guy and this guy's response to Jesus, and so Mark tells it with just one man. We're going to read it in Mark, but then I've got a video to show you which illustrates it in a little bit different way, in a little bit funnier way, so you get to watch that video as well. But first we're going to read the text. Mark 5, 1 through 20. They came to the other side of the sea, to the country of the Gerasenes. And when Jesus had stepped out of the boat, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. He lived among the tombs, and no one could bind him anymore, not even with a chain. For he had often been bound with shackles and chains, but he wrenched the chains apart and he broke the shackles in pieces. No one had the strength to subdue him. Night and day among the tombs and on the mountains, he was always crying out and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from afar, he ran and fell down before him. And crying out with a loud voice, he said, "What have you to do with me, Jesus, Son of the Most High God? I adjure you, by God, do not torment me." For he was saying to him, Come out of this man, you unclean spirit." And Jesus asked him, "What is your name?" He replied, "My name is Legion, for we are many." And he begged him earnestly not to send him out of the country. Now a great herd of pigs was feeding there on the hillside, and they begged him, saying, "Send us to the pigs, let us enter them." So he gave them permission, and the unclean spirits came out and entered the pigs, and the herd, numbering about 2,000, rushed down the steep bank into the sea and drowned in the sea. The herdsmen fled and told it in the city and in the country, and people came to see what it was that had happened. And they came to Jesus and saw the demon-possessed man, the one who had the legion, sitting there, clothed and in his right mind, and they were afraid. And those who had seen it described to them what had happened to the demon-possessed man and to the pigs, and they began to beg Jesus to depart from their region. As he was getting into the boat, the man who had been possessed with demons begged him that he might be with him. And he did not permit him, but said to him, "Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you." And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. All right, now prepare yourself for a much funnier version of the story.
So think about this concept. We'd like to share with you just the idea of the fact that Jesus Christ, when he walked on this planet, was fully human, fully God.
Matthew chapter 11, we see the fully human side of Jesus. He knew what it was like to be unpopular.
Fully God, he cast demons out of people.
Oh yes, we have just taken over these two people's bodies because we are demons.
And we're naked as demons.
Yes, we're over here in the cemetery and we're running around because we are demons.
And we ain't got no clothes on. We ain't got no clothes on.
Looky.
Where?
Over here. It's Jesus.
Oh, hello, Jesus.
No, don't talk to him. He's the enemy.
I know, but he's so nice.
Yes. What? What is our name? He wants to know our name.
Our name is Seizure because we are many. because we're lazy.
No, our name is not Seizure or Leisure. Our name is Legion because we are demons. We're Legion. We're many demons. Yes, demons.
It's not a very pretty name.
I know. I didn't name us.
I don't think Mommy liked us.
I don't think Mommy liked anyone.
She was a demon.
Yes.
Our name is Legion because we're many.
All right. What do you do? You need to stop. You look like a constipated Popeye. What are you doing?
No, I'm making my mean demon face at him.
He's not scared. He's laughing at us.
Oh, no.
Yes.
Jesus is laughing at me.
Yes.
That is not very WWJD.
And there he is.
You don't get a bracelet.
All right. What? He wants to cast us out of these bodies. Are you thinking what I'm thinking?
Yes.
Yes.
But if Superman is so smart, why does he wear his underpants on the outside of his outer pants? And why were you thinking of Superman when I was thinking of Superman?
I wasn't thinking
It's
about that.
weird. It's like we have ESPN, you know?
I wasn't thinking that
Do
at
you
all.
think he knows something we don't know?
Yes, Jesus, I'm
No,
sure.
Superman, stay on the subject.
What are you talking about?
Do you think he knows if you wear your underpants on the outside of your outer pants, you can run faster and jump higher? I've just had an epiphany.
Do you even know what that word means?
I have no idea. I'm going to start wearing my underpants on the outside of my outer pants. I'll bet when you first do it, it's a bit awkward and you walk funny at first. But once you get used to it, you're like, psst, psst. Check me out.
All right, what? Jesus, what? Right, you want to cast us out of these bodies. All right. Whatever you do, don't put us into the pigs over there. We don't want to go into the pigs.
Excuse me.
Yes.
I think we do want to go into the pigs.
We do want to go into the pigs, but I don't want him to know that we want to go into the pigs.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah, using your noodles.
Yes.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Isn't he the Son of God?
Well, yes.
He probably knows.
Good point. He's got that look in his eyes and cast us out.
No! Oh, I say, Nigel.
Yes, Lawrence.
It's a bit drafty out here, isn't it?
Yes. How did we get amongst all these tombs and catacombs? Why are we in the cemetery? And why are those pigs going off the side of the hill over there?
I do not know. That is not kosher at all.
No, it's not. Not in the least. No.
I am parched. Let's say we get a spot of tea.
Spot of tea would be lovely, yes.
Excellent.
Lawrence,
Yes, Nigel.
before we go back into town, shouldn't we put on some clothes first?
Oh, my stars. We're naked as jaybirds.
Yes. Fully human, fully God. On the fully human side of things, another piece of...
Yes. I show you that video because those guys are much funnier than I am. I don't know if that's exactly how it happened, but maybe that's one version of the story. There's a few things that are going on here, and I think that what Jesus does here, and what he does for this man, and what Mark chooses to record, I think really teaches us three really critical lessons. And this isn't just some story for us to be like, oh, that's a fun story, and let's make a funny video out of it. But I think there's some great truths that really can come out of this, and truths that are very applicable for you and me and where we're at even today. I think Mark writes this story because, in a sense, we are supposed to see ourselves through the eyes of this demon-possessed man. We are supposed to, in many ways, draw some connections between us and him, and I think that there are a lot of connections. You more than likely have never been possessed by a demon. I think as Christians, we cannot be possessed by demons. But I think we still have had sin in our life. We've still been oppressed by the power of sin. And I think we're supposed to draw some connections between us and this demon-possessed man. There's three things I think that this story really teaches us. And there's three things about Jesus' power, what Jesus does, and then what Jesus gives us. And we're supposed to draw it out of the story. The first thing is that Jesus heals us. Jesus heals us. This man was under the control of the enemy. And so were we before Christ came into our lives, before he called us out of sin, out of death, into life. We were powerless. Romans says that we were enemies of God, that we opposed God, that we wanted nothing to do with him. But God, in his great grace and mercy, called us. He gave us life. He called us from being his enemies to being his children. That is a profound and powerful and incredible thing. And just as this man was healed of this demon possession, you and I have been, if you've given your life to Jesus Christ, truly, you and I have been healed from the power of sin in our life. Jesus heals us. And that's in part of our story, and that's important. I'm going to come back to that idea of our story. But Jesus, the work that he did in our life, that act of healing us, of saving us, is a huge part of our story. Don't forget that. Like I said, I'm going to come back to that. The second thing that Jesus does, that he did to this man, that he does for us, is that Jesus restores us. I don't know if you've ever seen these shows. There's tons of them on reality TV about, like American Pickers or Pawn Stars and a lot of these shows. There's a lot of restoration that goes on. You've probably seen these shows where someone comes into the store with like this rusted piece of garbage. And he's like, I don't know, this was sitting in my backyard for 30 years or whatever, and it's just taking up space. I'm trying to sell it. And the shop owner or whoever, they have an eye to see it for what it really is. They see the rust and they see all the corrosion and the junk and the dirt and the grime, but they can see below the surface. They can see that with a process of restoration, they can bring that back to its original. And Jesus does the exact same thing with this man, and he does it with us as well. Jesus restores us. Jesus restored this man. It said that in Matthew's story, it talks about how they were, this demon-possessed man was running around naked, and Mark talks about how he would cut himself with stones, and how no one could even control him. And yet Jesus, after he heals him, it says that the people in the town, it says they walked out to see, okay, what's going on? And they see this man who was previously like this wild animal. And now it says he's clothed, he's sitting with Jesus, and he's in his right mind. See, Jesus restores this man. He goes from being, this crazy guy to this dignified person. He gives him dignity. And he does the same thing for you. Not only does Jesus heal us of our sin, but he is in the process of restoring us, of cleaning away the junk and the sin and the corruption and the corrosion, and restoring us back to our original form, restoring us back into his image, making us more over the process of our life, making us more and more and more like him. Jesus is in the process of restoring us. This man goes from being naked, violent, opposing God, to sitting there clothed and in his right mind. It really is a beautiful picture. But remember that as God is healing you and restoring you, that just like those cars or those old antiques, it really is a process. You're not going to wake up tomorrow fully restored, just like, oh, I'm just like Jesus now. This is great. I finally, gone through 3 years of Bible class, and now I'm just like Jesus. That's not what's going to happen. It is a lifelong process of becoming more and more and more like Jesus. That restoration process is an ongoing thing. And the more you stick with it, the more beautiful and the more like Jesus you will become. The efforts of the enemy, and I think it's important that you guys understand this, because the enemy will do everything now that if you've given your life to Christ, once that happens, the enemy will do everything in his power to slow down that restoration process, to make that restoration process go in reverse. He will try and remind you of your old self. He will try and make you feel like, oh, I'm no good. I say I'm a follower of Christ, and look at the sin in my life. I am garbage. And we really see that in this text as well. You see, the efforts of the enemy are to reduce this man to a wild animal. He almost reminds me of like some sort of a werewolf, really, when you read the story. It's like, he's howling at night. He's living in tombs. He's cutting himself. People try and like chain him up, and no one can control him. Every time I read that, I think of this hilarious story that happened to me when I was much younger. We moved up to the valley when I was like 7 or 8 years old. We lived in the city in Southern California. We're like, we want to live in the country. And so we moved up to Strathmore. I don't know if any of you know where Strathmore is at, but we bought like 5 acres, and we're like, sweet, let's get chickens and cows and rabbits and everything. And we didn't know anything about raising those things, so it was a lot of animals died under our care because we didn't know what we were doing. But we had these cows, and this one of our cows got out this one time, and us being, the country folk we are, my brother gets this rope that we had gotten, I think my parents bought us when we were kids. It was like a cowboy rope. And he's like, oh, I saw it in the movies, I'll just rope the cow. And so, this is this big old steer. And my brother inherited the skinny genetics in the family. I clearly did not. But my brother was like 90 pounds, and this big old bull or steer just goes like racing past him, and my brother shoo, and just nailed it around the neck. It was beautiful. And it's like in the movies, all of a sudden the line's starting to go out, and it's going to get tight. And my brother's like this, and it goes, shoo, and it just rips my brother like this. And he's like flying down the dirt road and my mom, I don't know why my mom yells, hold on, Michael. And he's like flying. Eventually had enough sense to let go. But I picture this man very similar to something like this, where as all the efforts of this man's family and friends and neighbors, all of their efforts were, couldn't pay off because this man was beyond their control. He was out of control. But Jesus turns him back into a normal person. And the same is true for you and me. I read this quote one time I thought was really very, very powerful. It says this: God knows your sin, but calls you by your name. Satan knows your name, but calls you by your sin. God knows your sin, but he calls you by your name. In his eyes, you have worth. You have value. He is restoring you. He is making you like his son. But Satan knows your name, and he is calling you by your sin. He's trying to reduce you back to an animal. He's trying to reduce you back to nothing. Let me ask you this. Do the thoughts in your head build you up? Do the things that you think about yourself when you look in the mirror, do those things build you up? Do they highlight your worth in and through Jesus Christ? Or are they degrading? Are they humiliating? When you look in the mirror, are you just reminded of your sin, of who you were before Christ? The answer to that question, where those thoughts come from, the answer will indicate the source of those thoughts. Again, God knows your sin, but calls you by your name. Satan knows your name, but calls you by your sin. What is it in you that makes you see yourself as an ugly person? What is your sin? What is it? Is it your family history? Your personal struggles, your hurts that make you feel just like this guy when you look in the mirror? What is it that you think disqualifies you? Listen, guys, those things tremble in the power of Jesus Christ. Those things tremble before him. And finally, number 3 is that Jesus gives us a mission. Jesus heals us, Jesus restores us, and then lastly, Jesus gives us a mission. Look at verse 19 and 20 again. He did not permit him, Jesus did not permit this man to come with him. He said, go to your friends and family and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. The Decapolis it's a word that means 10 cities. It's this region that this man was from. It's like saying, go back home to Tulare County or Kings County. He's saying, go back to where you came from and tell them how much the Lord has done for you. What I love and what is so beautiful about the gospel, what is so beautiful about the fact that Jesus saves you, is that he doesn't just save you so that you can sit on the sidelines and just say, all right, great, you're saved, you're in, now just, don't do anything, I'll continue to take care of everything. No, Jesus saves you and he brings you along. He gives you a mission. He calls you out as one of his ambassadors, as a light, as an agent for his mission and for his kingdom. He calls you to go out and to bring that healing and restoration process to others. He doesn't say, all right, you go take care of it and, don't bother me. He's saying, no, I will work in and through you in the lives of others and use your story as a key tool in that process. I think in our culture, in our Christian culture, we're so, in some ways, opposed to using our story as one of the main ways to share the gospel. We think that what we have to do is we have to open up to the book of Romans, and I'm not downplaying that at all, but we have to read them several verses and then explain how they can give their life to Christ if they pray a prayer, and then if they choose that, great, we'll lead them in the prayer, and then if not, then on to the next person. No. Our story is such a key and critical part of the process, of God's tool, of who you are. Don't be afraid to use your story, warts and all. All the ugly stuff of your story. Jesus doesn't tell this man, go out and tell what the Lord has done for you, but don't say anything about being demon possessed, and don't say anything about running around naked or anything like that. That's too offensive to people. That's too ugly. People would cringe at the thought of that. Don't tell that side of the story. That is not what Jesus says. He says, tell him what God has done in your life. Listen, guys, let me ask you 2 questions. Where is your mission and what is your story? Where is your mission and what is your story? I want you to really think hard about that. You might live in a family, in a room this size. I don't think that every person comes from the perfect, wonderful Christian family. It's very likely that you might be the only Christian in your family. Or maybe you come from a Christian family, but you know that behind closed doors, mom and dad and brother and sister don't act very much like Jesus Christ. Where is that is your mission field. Maybe on your sports team, maybe even in your classroom, maybe it's, in your neighborhood, in your church, in your youth group, there are kids that, again, also don't act very much like Jesus. That is your mission field. And what is your story? How has God healed you? How is he in the process now of restoring you and making you more like him? Think of how you can utilize that story to encourage, to inspire, to reach out to those people around you. Jesus heals you, Jesus restores you, and Jesus gives you a mission. So my question for you is, where is your mission? Who is your mission? And what is your story? And how are you going to incorporate that story into changing lives just as you have been changed, into bringing about that restoration process into other people's lives? Let me pray for us. Gracious Father, thank you for these young men and women. They are truly your lights. They are your ambassadors. They are your agents for your kingdom. God, do a great work in their life. Help them to see their story as something beautiful and not something ugly. Lord, thank you for how you are using all of us and how you are using your story to change us and to transform us, to make us more into your image. Lord, we love you, and we are grateful for the fact that you have saved us, that you have healed us. God, we could not have done it on our own. Use us now. Use us this day. We pray this in your name.